Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to take a break and you're all refreshed for the second half of the afternoon. We've a great lineup for you on the Evolution stage. I'm really looking forward to my fireside with Pat McCann, CEO of Delata Group and CEO of the DAA, Dalton Phillips, to discuss travel and tourism, an industry that has suffered immensely over the last 12 months, but with huge potential to bounce back. Check out the event schedule to see what sessions you want to hear across the two stages. But for now, join me in welcoming Francesca McDonagh, Group CEO of Bank of Ireland. Hello and thank you for watching the Business Show 2021. I'm Sarah Freeman, Managing Editor of the Business and Finance Media Group. In this fireside, themed On the Horizon, discussing future-focused leadership, we'll be looking at how business leaders can best navigate current challenges and how to strategise for the future. If you're tweeting, please use the hashtag Rebooting Ireland to be part of the online conversation. I'm delighted to be speaking with Francesca McDonagh, Group CEO of Bank of Ireland. Thanks so much for joining me here today, Francesca. You've led Bank of Ireland through a tumultuous time. How do you balance leading in the immediate while still being long-term future-focused?
I think for any business leader, you're always a bit worried actually about, are you doing enough in the here and now, tactical, urgent, whilst balancing that with more of the medium, longer term strategic. I think there's always a little bit of a balancing act. That was more pronounced than ever during COVID, where there was the real here and now urgency, but you couldn't forget the longer term strategy of the organisation. So for me, it's about purpose. You know, if in doubt, the purpose should serve both the near term immediacy, but also the longer term strategy. And at Bank of Ireland, our purpose is to enable our customers, colleagues and communities to thrive. And applying that, I know that sounds a bit twee, but applying that to our decisions, both short term and more medium, long term strategic, was very helpful, and also to be deliberate. So very early on, for example, during the pandemic, we would have been very explicit about the team and the resources that would be focused to the here and now. And those were the colleagues that set up payment breaks for 100,000 customers. They set up special helplines and special services in branches for vulnerable customers and carers. And they were also the team that provided support for businesses, for customers, for our colleagues. Overnight, we went from having maybe 30% of people working from home some of the time to 75% working from home all the time, and also fast tracking how we pay our suppliers to help with that SME ecosystem, particularly in Ireland. So there was very much a determined focus on the here and now, but a separate team also thought about the longer term. So how are we digitizing our business? And we've probably done more digital rollout in 2020 than we've done in the previous 3 years. What are we doing about our own efficiency and agility? And we've been on a big cost takeout journey. What are we doing in terms of growth? We've increased our market share during that tumultuous year. And just thinking longer term about our own business strategy across a range of stakeholder perspectives. So I think purpose-driven and very deliberate is how I try with the team to get that balance right.
Right, so the balancing act requires leaders to look at the purpose and see whether it meets both short-term and long-term goals. Francesca, COVID-19 has caused many sectors and organisations to pivot and some industries to fundamentally change entirely. How has COVID-19 impacted the banking sector in Ireland, and are there any long-term impacts?
Yeah, so even before COVID, the banking sector, not just in Ireland, but in Europe, has gone through a lot of change and challenge and actual sort of threats to the whole viability of the traditional business model. So we're in a long-term low to negative interest rate environment, and that has reduced the profitability of any bank that has had income from deposits before. Credit formation has been very muted, even before anyone had heard of COVID-19, and despite the growth in the Irish economy, because of Brexit partly and uncertainty and just people not wanting to take on debt, we saw very muted credit formation. We were growing our lending, but not in line with what you'd expect in a fast-growing GDP market. And also, you've got a lot of new entrants, you've got disruption, you've got price compression, happening and the cost of investing in technology going up. So the Irish and European banking model would be challenged before COVID came along. And COVID has had a huge impact on, I think, every household or business, and some, life or death of individuals and businesses that have failed. For banking, we entered this crisis in a totally different position to, for example, how we came through the global financial crisis. Risk management, balance sheet size and structure and capital position was very strong for Irish banks going into the crisis. And I think the sector has weathered a period of uncertainty quite resiliently. We, at Bank of Ireland, we would have made a full year underlying loss in 2020, like many businesses, but we were profitable in the second half of this year. The fundamentals and resilience of the bank are strong. And I think the priority has been much less about sort of sales and much more about sustainability for our customers. So the focus on payment breaks, on supporting customers. We were the main participant in the SBCI's COVID-19 lending support schemes and capital guarantee, and the government's credit guarantee scheme. And that has been very, very much at the forefront. So we've weathered a difficult period, well positioned, profitable in the second half of this year. And I think in some areas, it's enabled us to accelerate some of the changes that we've always wanted to make, particularly around digital.
Okay, very interesting. So the priority has been less about sales and more about sustainability for your customers. We know more than ever the importance digital has to play regarding how we now work and do business. What role will it play in the future of the banking sector? So
we've met and exceeded now a tipping point in how customers choose to engage and want to engage with banks, both day to day and also for some of the bigger decisions, even getting a mortgage. People are increasingly wanting to do it online. That was true before the pandemic, and it's only accelerated. And I don't think people are kind of, looking forward to going back into a branch, if I'm honest, in the way that we're all looking forward to going back into a restaurant or a gym or a pub or a theatre. So I think that change is permanent. It is a bit like once you discover Netflix, you're less likely to be looking at DVDs for films. I mean, it is an evolution that I think is irreversible. And that doesn't mean that personal face-to-face relationship isn't important. It is, but very much with the digital enablement. So, we can do face-to-face like we're doing now, but on Zoom with a customer, and increasingly we're doing that. For a lot of everyday transactions, customers want ease of use. They expect resilience. And we've seen a lot of volume increase in online banking and contactless payments. And we've been through a period of very strong resilience during the last year plus. But the change and expectation around digital, I think, is only going to increase. So even before COVID, we would have had about a 2/3 reduction in branch footfall across our network. And during the same period, we've seen a 2/3 increase in digital engagement. And since we launched our new mobile app in the middle of 2020, we would have seen about 25% more customers registering with the app. So I think that is the direction of travel. And we see that not just in banking, but how people consume entertainment, buy things online and communicate. So that is a trend that has only been accelerated by COVID.
So an irreversible evolution with people increasingly keen to do things online, and that change is permanent. So to move on to something slightly different, this is an interesting one that we've heard a lot about recently, the dismantling of traditional hierarchical organisational structures to flatter structures. What is your view on this? Do you agree it's happening? And if so, is it a permanent change, do you think?
Yes, I agree. Yes, it's a permanent change. And you didn't ask, but I'm very supportive of that dismantling, despite being part of an organisation that is actually one of those institutions. But we have to change how we operate for both our customers, but also for our colleagues. I mean, people expect something, not just because of their age. Colleagues of all generations expect a different experience in the organisation that they work at. So I think working from home has changed the tone and nature of how we interact within an institution as well. So like I said, 30% of people some of the time before COVID, now nearly 80% all the time. We won't go back to the way we were. The office is not dead either. I think there'll be a hybrid approach, but that has given people, I think, more opportunity. It has been challenging depending on people's home setup and children and family and care responsibilities. But I think there has been more informality. I've got to know, I thought I knew my team pretty well. I probably got to know them, their partners, children, pets better during a period of being away from each other. So I think that's a permanent change, and I'm all for that. Also, I think the whole point and need for greater diversity and inclusion, whether that's gender, which obviously I'm very passionate about, but all forms of diversity and inclusion, and maybe just having banking, for example, and some of those big old institutions far more reflective of the society that they serve, more in touch with what is one of the youngest populations, average population in the world, a small, fast-growing, one of the only economies that grew positively in GDP in 2020, despite the pandemic. I think banks and institutions like ours need to modernise. And also to attract and retain talent. Obviously, we've got a period of unemployment now because of the pandemic, but then you look at a lot of companies who are announcing an increase in recruitment in Ireland. There was a huge amount of competition for talent. And I think to be compelling and competitive as an employer, we also need to be showing a flatter, more innovative structure. So, for example, we've gone from 10 layers to 7. In terms of, when I say a layer, I mean between the CEO and a more junior colleague, the maximum will be 10 layers. In the past, that's now down to 7. I think we could go further. We've implemented far more agile ways of working to make quicker decisions for all of our stakeholders, including our shareholders. I mean, taking costs out has made us more efficient as a bank. And that is a good thing.
So Bank of Ireland sees the need for modernisation and is making it happen. And just to follow up on some of the points you've raised there, what are some of the qualities that a leader needs if flatter structures are emerging?
I think when it's flatter, you're more exposed. I think COVID has exposed cultures. They found organisational cultures as they are. So if you had a very open, good communicating type of culture, that would be only revealed more and be seen as an advantage during COVID. If you had a very bureaucratic, very inward-looking, not customer-focused culture, that would only be accentuated during the crisis. So what I found with the team is that we've been much more visible, bizarrely. We've probably done more Zoom calls for inviting all 10,000 of our colleagues in the last 13 months than we would have ever envisaged doing all colleague sort of events, because it just would have been impossible to get everyone into a room. There's been an openness and informality, so I think that sort of authenticity and communication very important. I think resilience, because we're having to make very difficult decisions that are quite existential for businesses and for our customers every single day. And ultimately the shareholder invests in an institution, and being able to have regular engagement, have a clear narrative, deliver on what you said you're going to, that sort of results-driven commercial elements is incredibly important during a period where many businesses have been severely challenged. So those are the sort of characteristics that were important before COVID, but have probably become more visible, like commerciality, communication, and resilience, particularly around tough decisions have to be made.
So authenticity in leadership is key. And Francesca, with the benefit of hindsight, what are some of the biggest successes and learnings of the past year within the banking sector? And could there have been changes or improvements in the national response over the last year?
We could always do things better, so I'm not defensive about that. I think what was positive is that the banking sector wanted to be, and myself with my sort of peer group at the very beginning, were quick and proactive in offering payment breaks without being told to, like in many countries, by a regulator or asked to by the political system. We were proactive in agreeing to do this quickly. And I think that we would have given 100,000 households and businesses breathing space when they needed it most. And that's avoided credit events and deterioration of people's credit records as a result. And I think that was a good thing. I think if hindsight's always 2020. If I'd known about COVID before, I mean, obviously the digital element is even more digital progress that we could have made. We've done that during COVID. Customers have responded well. We've seen a 22% reduction in total complaints in Ireland. And a lot of that is because we've been more increasingly customer focused. Now, we're in a sector where there is a long memory of banks and their role in the global financial crisis and the Irish banking crisis. And I think we still have a long way to go to continue to rebuild that trust and belief. And that's what we're doing. And I think the payment break and response, the proactive response during COVID has hopefully been felt positively from customers. I also feel incredibly proud of our colleagues. So it's very easy to talk about values and culture on a poster in a canteen when we used to go to staff canteens. But you really have seen, I think we've really seen just the quality of our people and them going the extra mile for customers, particularly in the front line, but across all areas of the bank every day during a really difficult period. And I feel huge pride, also huge responsibility for the well-being, particularly when we talk about, obviously, a health crisis that is COVID, but I think the mental health implications and the need to ensure the well-being of colleagues who are everyone's having a very different experience of COVID has really come to the forefront. So we put a huge amount of emphasis on that. Not a minute too soon either. I think it's a really important change that marks this crisis in a way that in the past, banking crises were about capital, financial capital. I think this crisis has been for many businesses about human capital and people, and ensuring that our frontline are there to serve our customers every day has been a major part of our efforts and supporting them in that endeavour.
So prioritising human capital and ensuring the well-being of colleagues is essential and a big priority for Bank of Ireland. And I think we've time for one more question, Francesca. What are you most looking forward to when things return to normal, or at least semi-normal?
I'm looking forward. I've sort of had the same view for most of my waking day. I'm looking forward to getting out and about, seeing colleagues, seeing customers. Zoom is great, but it's not the same as actually going on sites and visiting and seeing people. On a personal level, I'm looking forward to having some element of break. Looking forward to hopefully a domestic holiday, maybe this late summer, who knows? And seeing family, seeing friends, and seeing colleagues. I think that the human element of our relationships is incredibly important. But I also feel very fortunate that I've been busy and focused, and I've had a lot of privilege in this role. I know we will speak to customers who have lost their jobs or their income and going through huge amounts of stress and anxiety during this period. So also, I think being grateful for the situation that some of us may find ourselves in.
That's a lovely note to finish on. Thanks so much, Francesca McDonagh, Group CEO for Bank of Ireland.